Good morning, everyone. Joe Samaniego here from the Grid Network with Kobe Lambert from the podium finish, welcoming you to a special Grid Life pre-race. Today we're previewing the 68th running of the Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring. It is the season finale for the 2020 IMSA WeatherTech Sports Cars Championship. The LMP2 and GTLM championships have been decided, but DPI and GTD is still up in the air. Of course, originally the 12 Hours of Sebring was supposed to take place in the middle of March, but then, of course, we know what happened. The global pandemic shut down everything. The race has been postponed until November, and here we are right now. Kobe's been quite a journey. How did we get to this point?
Oh yeah, Joe, definitely been quite a journey. It's been a really crazy, unprecedented season of racing. 2020 has definitely led to many unexpected changes. As you mentioned, one of the unexpected changes was rescheduling the 12 hours of Sebring from March to November. I remember when the sports world started to shut down back in March, and one of the drivers in today's field, David Hannemeyer Hansen, was very outspoken about canceling the race in March, and DHH thought it was extremely irresponsible to race that weekend, considering the fact that COVID-19 was brand new to us. We didn't really know much about it. And cases were rising, people were getting sick. It's just a really crazy situation, and it's even crazier today. And places all over the country were starting to close down their businesses. Sports world suspending operations effective immediately, and DHH got criticized and slammed hard on social media for voicing his concerns about everyone's health and safety. In the end, IMSA ended up postponing Sebring until now, and DHH got the last laugh. And this is not necessarily a question related to racing, but more so life in general. So here you go, Joe. Well, why should we never feel afraid to speak up and voice our opinions, although our views might be widely unpopular at the time?
It's very important to speak up your concerns, especially when it comes to safety. Of course, in March, this was a brand new virus. I could still remember January, February, the initial thought was this was not the kind of virus that could spread easily, but more you have to be with somebody that was already sick. Well, of course, as we all know, things have changed, and we now know a lot more about this virus and how contagious it is. So, for back in March to say, hey, we need to postpone this race, of course, that's not going to be a popular decision. Along with, telling the fans, hey, the race is postponed, there's no racing, which is a big letdown for the fans. For sponsorships, especially if this was a case where if we had like what we know back then, where it wasn't that big of a deal, we would have been talking about how this was a big mistake. The way everything has, of course, worked out with the pandemic, we now know how serious it is, and it was a good call to postpone the event. The last thing we would want is headlines saying on how the Sebring 12 Hours in March was a super spreader event. We don't want to hear that. That would have been bad for motorsports, not just IMSA, but all of motorsports in general, because we look like a reckless industry. And then I think a lot of people will start referring back to how, especially motorsports in the past, where driver safety wasn't the biggest priority, now being the limelight for the wrong reason.
Yeah, you definitely want to make sure you're taking care of yourself during these times, and when you're being safe, it's not living in fear at all. You're just trying to do your best job to protect yourself and everyone else's, and I think that's what's called being a responsible individual, caring about other people and making sure you're not infecting them or you're not getting infected by following all of the health guidelines. Yeah, so is definitely not living in fear. And at the time, a lot of people thought David Hannemeyer Hansen was out of his mind. And I remember that day when when he was voicing his opinion about, be like, hey, I don't think we should race at Sebring right now. I think we should postpone it and come back later in the fall when we can all enjoy the event. And yeah, the pandemic is heading in a much worse direction now than it was back in March when we were supposed to have the Mobil 112 hours of Sebring as a regular day. But now we know ways to protect ourselves, like by wearing a mask and social distancing. So yes, although things are not that great right now in the world, I do think wearing a mask and following those health guidelines, we can make sure that everyone who's at Sebring today are able to make it out of there healthy, and hopefully nobody gets sick. But looking back at everything that happened, I want to say kudos to David Hannemeyer Hansen. I'm sure he knew he was going to get a lot of backlash because shutting down things, it was such a new concept that happened all at once. people were not happy at all. But looking back at everything, I think it was the right decision that the entire sports world, that decided to shut down until we learn more about this virus, so we could prepare things, and and overall, I think everything worked out for the best, and wishing wishing everyone a safe weekend at Sebring. And now looking back at the season as a whole, it feels like the season open in Rolex 24 at Daytona occurred years ago. I know I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it's really been a long year for everyone. After Daytona in January, IMSA raced at Daytona again the next round. This time it was a 2 hour 40-minute sprint race on the 4th of July. And it was such a long gap between the 24-hour race in January and then the WeatherTech 240 in July. Then we ran a sprint race at Sebring. After that, it was Road America and the GT only round at VIR. On September 5th, Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta hosted the first of two IMSA endurance races. A 6 hour endurance race there replaced the sailing 6 hours of the Glen. And before the 10 hour Motul Petit Le Mans on October 17th, which is typically the season finale, two races took place in between. We had a 2 hour 40-minute sprint race in Mid Ohio, followed by a 100-minute GT only race at the Charlotte Roval at night in wet weather, treacherous conditions. That was a really crazy weekend at the Roval. Then we completed Motul Petit Le Mans, made a quick trip out west to WeatherTech Raceway Lagoon Center, and here we are today with the 12-hour season to close out the 2020 IMSA season. With only 77 days until the season opened in 2021, Rolex 24 at Daytona, and it's definitely a shorter off season than usual. Basically, lost an entire month than the usual schedule. Will this have a significant impact on any 2021 programs, especially teams that might be switching to a new car and haven't taken delivery of it yet?
It is a significant impact for the offseason and for those teams, as you mentioned. You got 1 month less. That means more work in such a short amount of time. I do feel these teams are at the caliber where they could handle that. They could go ahead, okay, we know we're going to be 1 month behind, but we're going to put in everything we can to be ready for Daytona. And of course, we still are not 100% sure if we are in a situation where the Daytona 24 hours is postponed. If that's postponed, it does buy everyone a little bit of time. I do think for the teams, yes, they'll be behind the ball a little bit, losing that month, but overall, they're capable, I feel, of working, getting everything in a little bit of a faster pace. May not be 100% perfect and ready by Daytona, but I definitely think they'll still be on the grid, ready to race, assuming we're still racing on time.
Yeah, definitely. Teams gonna be behind the ball a little bit. I mean, when we're looking at the accurate DPIs, Wayne Taylor Racing, Meyershank Racing, that's what they're gonna be, racing next year in the DPI class, and they're not gonna take delivery of their accurate DPIs from Acura Team Penske until after the 12 hours of Sebring is over. And typically, you'd have that extra month because the season usually ends towards the middle of October, and now we're heading towards the middle of November. So definitely a lot of lost time to get to know your car, and and that's a good point you brought up, Joe, about the possibility if COVID-19 cases are really bad in Florida in January and they had to end up postponing the Rolex 24 to a later date. Is Yeah, but looking at the big picture, teams have to prepare like, hey, in 77 days, we're going to be racing at Daytona. So you have to go in with that mindset, and the teams might get lucky and get extra time to get to know their cars and plan for next year, especially if the event is postponed. But at the moment, you have to hit the ground running and be like 77 days. We got to get ready for Daytona. We have to assume that the Rolex 24 is going to happen, and certainly even if it does happen, it's pretty much gonna look the same as it does this year at the racetrack. Mask and social distancing, because this pandemic isn't going anywhere anytime soon.
Taking a look at the championship battles, as I mentioned on top of the program, LMP2 and GTLM titles are already decided. So definitely it's going to be not those two championships we're going to be looking at, but some of the others. One of the big reasons why LMP2 is already wrapped up, Patrick Kelly wrapped up the LMP2 championship with PR on Matheson Motorsports. Although we haven't seen a ton of competition in LMP2 this year, Kelly's championship is definitely well deserved, just going out there racing hard week in, week out, especially after the long road to recovery to get back into racing. Now, NBC Sports have brought up Kelly's story several times this season, almost a decade ago. Kelly was involved in a motor vehicle accident on the road. He suffered a brain injury and was uncertain if he would ever race again. Over the years, Kelly worked hard to beat the odds and miraculously returned to the sport of auto racing. Now, he is an IMSA LMP2 champion. Kobe, is this the ultimate feel-good story of IMSA?
Yes, it's definitely the ultimate feel good story. You have to tip your hat to Patrick Kelly because after suffering that motor vehicle accident and suffering a brain injury, a lot of people think that you're probably never going to race again. But and definitely the odds were stacked against him to return to competitive racing. But he kept working hard, persevered, and look where he is today. He's an IMSA LMP2 champion. Kelly, he typically starts he typically starts the races in a number 52 Orca '07 Gibson LMP2 car. And when Patrick Kelly starts those races, he's on it from the get go. And at one point it was about maybe 10 to 15 minutes into the race, and he already had a 20-second lead over the next competitor in the LMP2 class. So definitely Patrick Kelly not only returned from a brain injury after getting involved in that car accident, but Patrick Kelly he's lightning fast, and he absolutely puts the pedal to the metal when he's on the racetrack. So definitely well deserved championship, and Patrick's definitely one of the quickest guys in the LMP2.
One of the quickest guys and definitely well deserved. I know just seeing what he's been able to do on the track and considering where he came from, it's been a big inspiration. And that's always, I feel, one of the big parts about motorsports. We've seen racers come back from such severe injuries. Kelly, one of the most severe, especially the brain trauma, come back, get a champion. That is truly an inspiration, not just in sports car, not just in motorsport. I feel in general when it comes to human rebounding from such events, yeah, it is a big story. Now, of course, with that championship wrapped up, the other story, of course, Antonio Garcia and Jordan Taylor, they clinched the GTLM title at Laguna Seca after their sister car, the number 4 Corvette C8R, failed post-race inspection. Now, Garcia and Taylor have won 5 times this year in GTLM at the Daytona Sprint Race, Road America, BIR, Mid-Ohio, and the Charlotte Roval. With the championship fight over, can the number 3 Corvette close the season with a 6th victory in class?
Yeah, certainly. I think Corvette Race is more than capable of making this happen, especially the number three. It's been one incredible season for Antonio Garcia and Jordan Taylor, winning 5 races, and ironically all of them been sprint races. And looking at the Corvette C8R, it's gonna be interesting to see if they can get their first race their first race victory in an endurance event. And I think the big question now with the C8R, it's already proven itself in the sprint format. Yeah, 2 hours 40 minutes or 100-minute races. Yeah, they're proving that they got it down. And now I think the question now for Corvette racing, can they finally get an endurance win with that car? It certainly seems like that is possible. They've improved that car a lot since the season opened in Rolex 24 at Daytona, and now since they've had an entire year to develop the C8R, maybe just maybe they'll finally get an endurance victory in the Mobile One 12 Hours of Sebring.
And what a victory will that be? Sebring, 12 hours. Of course, that's one of the big races for IMSA throughout sports car. That will be really huge for them. Now, of course, those are the titles that are wrapped up, but we still have unsettled business when it comes to DPI and GTD. Starting with DPI, Rick Taylor and Helio Castroneves leads the point standings by 2 over Ringer Van de Zanda and Ryan Briscoe. In third, we have Pippo Durrani, 9 points back. It looks like it's going to come down to the Acura Team Penske's and Wayne Taylor Racing. Durrani is an ace at Sebring with a strong wheel engineering team. Durrani still has a solid chance to take home the driver's title, so don't count him out. In the last 4 12-hour series, Durrani claimed the overall victory 3 times. Ultimately, for Durrani, it looks like for his 4th overall title win and 3 in a row, which will put him 3rd on the all-time list, tied with Frank Bella and Alan McNish. Now, unlike Taylor and Castroneves, Bandizani and Briscoe don't have a ride yet for next year. How much would winning the DPI title together before departing Wayne Taylor Racing will help secure them rides for next season?
Oh, definitely. What winning a title goes a long way, and it still blows my mind that both of these drivers are not returning. Yeah, like look at Ringer Van de Zanda and Ryan Briscoe. They're in a good position right now to take home the championship, and it's just really crazy that you can have such a great season, and especially Ringer Van de Zanda being in the right place at the right time to take advantage of the incident at Petit Le Mans between Durrani and Ricky Taylor. Yeah, it's just it's unfortunately in the world of motorsports, this is just business because now it seems like that Ricky Taylor and Felipe Albuquerque is going to be going to the number 10 Wayne Taylor Racing Acura DPI next year full time, and Ringer Van der Zandt and Ryan Briscoe, Scott Dixon and Kamui Kobayashi from the Rolex 24, they're not going to be returning to Wayne Taylor Racing, so definitely going to be some big changes over there, and yeah, it might be a little later in the game for Ringer Van der Zandt and Ryan Briscoe, and and maybe they'll be able to find seats. There's still a lot of time to get a seat at least for the Rolex 24, and there's still time to get something done for a full season. And we've actually seen some deals come together as late as the week of the Roar before the 24. So anything is possible. It would just be unfortunate if neither of those drivers are on the grid next season, considering that they are in contention for a DPI title.
Definitely, I would agree. Seeing them both next year will be really good, and especially fighting for the DPI title. Now, of course, one of the big things with the DPI title will definitely be competitive, and we can say the same thing about GTD entering today's race. Matt McMurray, Mario Fahrenbacher led the championship. 7 points back, we have Patrick Blount and Ryan Hardwick. Then we have Aaron Talix is 8 points down behind them all. And his AIM Faster Sullivan teammate and co-driver Jack Hosworth is 10 points behind. Now, last month on our Mattel Petit Le Mans pre-race show, we discussed the history of the teams in sports car racing, switching up the drivers lineup to give the teams a better chance at winning the title. With Talib and Hawksworth being separated in this point, are you surprised that Ames Faster Sullivan didn't try out a different strategy?
Yes, I'm actually a little surprised here. I mean, when you look at the points, Talix and Hawksworth, 8 and 10 points back. So if they do win the championship, it's not going to be both of them together since they're obviously in the same car, number 14 Lexus. It's going to be either or the other. So I think the best chance to win the championship here would have been to put one of them in the 12 and one of them in the 14 to give the team a better shot at winning the championship. And when we discussed this last month, I really thought this would probably be their strategy to ensure that they have the best shot to win the championship. And with this strategy right here to keep them in the same car, it really seems like when you're looking at this situation that basically conceded Jack Hawksworth's chance to win the championship, and that they're banking that they're going to be able to give the drivers championship to Aaron Talib.
I agree. It does seem Aaron Talib is in a more favorable position to get the champion over Jack. One of the big things, of course, when it comes to racing your teammate, is such a big deal for the team, especially when it comes to a situation like this. I feel overall the team has, for the most part, handled it all right. We've seen in the past how sometimes teammates, the battle just really intensifies and gets really to get to the point where it gets nasty. I don't see that occurring, but definitely it's been, of course, for all the fans following, entertaining. With motorsports, of course, we all are always drawn to the spirit of competition, and the competition between the two is just really one of the items that are standing out this season in IMSA.
Yeah, definitely. And looking at the breakdown of the competition, we have 31 cars racing today at Sebring. Starting with the DPI class, have 8 DPIs, 4 Cadillacs, 2 Mazdas, and 2 Acuras. And looking at those Acuras, it's the final race for Acura Team Penske. Dan Cameron and Juan Pablo Montoya have experienced a lot of bad luck this season in number 6, while the number 7 of Ricky Taylor and Helio Castroneves currently lead the championship entering Sebring. How special would it be to end the partnership between Acura and Team Penske with a second consecutive championship, especially after winning last year with Dane Cameron and Juan Pablo Montoya?
It will be very huge. Of course, anytime a partnership's going to end, you always want to end it on a high note to say we left on top. For Acura Penske, I feel definitely this is one of the combinations a lot of people are going to be following. And a lot of people are really, I would say, disappointed to see it come to an end. They would have loved to see it keep going. But of course, we know in auto racing, a lot of times business deals, there's an end date, and sometimes both parties have to move on. But definitely, they could reclaim another championship. I think that will get a lot of people really excited, and for everyone to say, "Look, they're that good," and they were when at the end of the season still number one.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I feel like this partnership, if they're able to get the championship this year with the number 7 car, Ricky Taylor, Helio Castroneves, after the number 6 one last year with Dan Cameron, Juan Paulo Montoya, that would be a huge success. Both Team Penske DPIs will become champions, and I believe that would be the perfect exit as Team Penske downsizes its motorsports program, as we know, exiting the Acura DPI program, and they're going to be and they're exiting the Australian Supercars series as well. And looking back at Motul Petit Le Mans, tempers flared as Ricky Taylor and Pippo Durrani made contact, battling for the lead in the closing minutes of the 10-hour endurance race. Durrani crashed and didn't get to finish the race while Taylor continued on. Incident cost both the race as Wayne Taylor raced and took advantage of the situation, and Pippo confronted Ricky after the race, voicing his displeasure with the Acura Team Penske driver. Then their co-drivers Felipe Nasr and Helio Castroneves got into it during a practice session at Laguna Seca, which looked like some mind games were being played. If the fight for the win comes down to the number 31 Cadillac and the number 7 Acura, what could possibly go wrong? And do you think tempers will flare?
Oh man, I do think there'll be tempers flaring, especially the way things have been going this year. It's not been a normal year, so anytime there's an opportunity to get a win, get a position, take it. I mean, as we had discussed at the top of the program, we knew March, okay, we're going to be racing here in November, but we weren't sure how many races. And IMSA has done a good job piecing together a schedule. Here we are, final race of the year. It's been a long year. For them, it must feel long because we've gone such a long time without racing, and then short and almost fast paced pressure of race after race. Okay, we're racing here a couple weeks from now. Get ready. So for it all to come down to this point, I see them they're going to race each other hard. If it comes to an on track battle, they're not going to give each other an inch. They're going to race each other really hard on the track, and that, of course, could put yourself in a position where you push a little too hard the other driver. One of you don't give, somebody's going to end up losing spots, positions, and that's where we're going to see some temper flaring. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to be discussing after this race about some sort of incident between the two.
Yeah, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me either. We all know what happened at Motil Petit Le Mans, and then that practice session with their co-drivers Nasser and Castro Neves, Laguna Seca. Joe, that was really insane. I remember when that happened at first, and I saw it on my timeline on Twitter. And I'm like, oh my goodness, you even got the co-drivers getting into it, and usually this is the type of situation you expect to see over in NASCAR, stock car racing, slam and bang. But we're seeing a lot of that stock car mentality right now over in IMSA with the number 31 Cadillac and the number 7 Acura, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be on the edge of their seats if we're in like 30 minutes to go with the 12 hours of Sebring, and then we have Pippo Durrani and Ricky Taylor fighting for the win, and it's an intense battle, and I know for sure those two won't give each other an inch on track, and it's going to be really intense and crazy. And man, I'm not sure if we're going to see another incident like Petit Le Mans, but as Calvin Fish says, it would not shock me if we see some RG bargy, and if it all goes wrong, we could see more tempers flare in the post race scenes. And now looking at the LMP2 class, got four entries. After PR1 Madison Motorsports was the sole LMP2 to show up at Laguna Seca, we have three other competitors: Tower Motorsport by Starworks, Performance Set, and Enter Europol competition. and next year LMP3 will start competing in the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. And it seems like there's a lot of buzz and interest in LMP3 next season, but because the LMP3 budget is way more affordable than running an LMP2 program. And with an already low car count, do you think the addition of LMP3 will harm LMP2's uncertain future in IMSA?
It does possess a threat to LMP2. Of course, with everything going on with this pandemic, of course, we've been talking about it a lot. It has affected sports leagues, the teams, same for IMSA. The teams, they're now looking at smaller budgets. There's still a lot of uncertainty with sponsorship. We know earlier this year, when the pandemic started out, a lot of the, especially oil companies, saw a big drop in prices. That's going to affect them long term. We still haven't seen so much of it, but we know sponsorship dollars are going to be harder to get. Might be smaller sponsorship deals. So to have a new class that's going to be cheaper, it was definitely going to draw. If you're an LMP2 and it's like, hey, we could take LMP2, here's how much we could save if we were to switch over to LMP3. There might be an additional initial upfront cost of switching over, but in the long run, our team could be healthy and we could run well in this brand new class, get wins, maybe championship. Is we're going to be in a bigger, much bigger, clearer picture for our future going forward after 2021.
Yes, it's certainly gonna be interesting to see what happens with LMP2 moving forward, especially with so much interest with LMP3. It's more affordable for the teams to go out there and put together a budget to run LMP3 for however many races they're going to be competing in next season in IMSA. And with LMP2, I know one of the biggest complaints going on is with TV time. LMP2 is hardly shown on television, and for those team sponsors, that's not good at all. And I remember reading an interview recently with John DeGeese from Sports Car 365. In his article reading about Performance Tech Motorsports, it says that they're unlikely to return to LMP2 next season. And one of their sponsors said that honestly, if they didn't know that Performance Tech was in the race, they wouldn't know based on the television broadcast because IMSA they heavily focus on DPI and GTLM and then GTD, and at times it really feels like LMP2 is an afterthought, and we all know that these teams that need to be shown on television in order to attract interest from sponsors, and that certainly helps out a lot. And when you're not even showing the LMP2 class, and you're a team out there looking for sponsors, it certainly does not help your case at all. Yeah, it's really too early to make an accurate prediction what's going on, but if we see like 10 LMP3s next season, and stat car count and maybe 2 or 3 LMP2s, then we'll certainly see where this is headed in the future. And now switching to the GTLM class, got 6 cars. Your typical suspects: BMW, Team RLL, Corvette Racing, and Porsche GT Team. And for one Corvette Racing driver, it's going to be the end of an era. 48-year-old Oliver Gavin is retiring from full-time driving with Corvette Racing as a GM factory driver since the year 2002. So Ollie's been at it for a long time. Gavin is a 5-time IMSA GT class champion between the American Le Mans Series and modern day WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. He's a 5-time class winner at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, 5-time class winner at the Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring, 5-time class winner at the Motul Petit Le Mans, and he has one class win at the Rolex 24 at Daytona. Wow, it's definitely been a great ride and a special career for Ollie. Considering his impressive list of accomplishments, do you think he'll be remembered as one of the all-time greats in sports car racing?
Easily, I feel he'll definitely be one of the all-time greats in sports car racing. One of the big things with sports car racing, while a lot of times, especially with the media, it is overshadowed by NASCAR, Formula One, IndyCar. When you talk to sports car fans, they really have a passion for the sports. They will tell you the history of sports car racing as much as they know, and they're willing to share that passion. I believe is because of fans like them, the sports car fans. His name will continue on. But even though a lot of times with the media, we may not hear his name in future programming, whether it's the Daytona 24 hours, Sebring races, IMSA coverage. But definitely when fans are talking about sports car racing and hey, who are some of the best drivers of all time? His name will be in that discussion, and I definitely feel a big part of it is because of how passionate sports car fans are.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I like about the sports car racing environment. The fans are very passionate, and I feel like sports car racing is very, very underrated all across the world. I mean, your major championships like NASCAR, IndyCar, Formula One, now Formula E's coming up. All of that's great, but there's still a lot of there's a lot of great racing, talented drivers in the world of sports car racing as well who should be in the conversation. We were talking about some of the greatest drivers of all time. I know when we're looking at greatest drivers of all time, we're always talking about Formula One, IndyCar, and NASCAR drivers from those series. But I feel like that drivers in sports car racing don't get the respect that they deserve. And looking at Oliver Gavin's list of accomplishments, wow, you've won 5 GT championships between the American Le Mans Series and the current WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, and then you've won three of the crown jewels 5 times: the 24 hours of Le Mans, 12 hours of Sebring, and the 10-hour race at Petit Le Mans. And a lot of drivers they race at those places for years, and they can't even get one class victory. And between those three crown jewels, Gavin has 15 wins in those events, and then the 24 hours of Daytona. So definitely, what a spectacular career. And I think at the end of the day, everybody's gonna look at Oliver Gavin and say he's definitely one of the best that sports car racing has ever seen. And after the checker flag flies, we'll see the end of Porsche's factory GTLM program. Full season drivers Nick Tandy, Fred McEwicky, Earl Bamber, and Lawrence Van Thor will have to find work elsewhere. And it's definitely going to be very bittersweet. I know for a lot of fans watching the number 912 lineup split up, fans have really enjoyed Bamber and Van Thor, or as they are called, Bam Thor. Maybe this won't be goodbye for Bam Thor forever, but maybe more so of a see you later. And with Porsche departing the class, BMW rumored to only do Enduros next year and only Corvette showing commitment to the full season in GTLM. What do you think's next for this category? Could we be witnessing the final days of GTLM?
A lot of uncertainty with GTLM. I know with Corvette, BMW, and Porsche, those three, a lot of times you think of GTLM, you will think of those three out there. One of the big things, of course, the sport is evolving. We know, especially sports car racing, we see classes come and go. It'll be really weird to not see GTLM there. But I do think, especially with as we're seeing more hybrids, even electric vehicles, the introduction of hyper class, I would not be surprised if we see some sort of new class or a GTLM come back in a way where it's going to encompass a lot of newer technology and bring back Porsche, BMW, Chevrolet re-sign up, or even lead a new class option going into the future.
Yeah, definitely a new class is certainly an option. We'll definitely keep watching this situation develop. Or another thing that could happen is we could see GTLM, just scrap completely in IMSA, and then those teams would go into the GTD class. And I understand that it's possible to convert the Corvette C8R GTLM car into a GT3 car. Yeah, so it would probably take some time to do that, but it's certainly not impossible. So if worst comes to worst, Corvette could always convert their car into a GT3 car, and then if they wanted to go to Le Mans, they could upgrade it back into the GTE spec car, so they'd be able to compete at Le Mans and in IMSA as well. And the final class competing, as always, GT Daytona. We have 13 car field, very diverse lineup. We have Meyer Shank Racing, Wright Motorsports, and Aim Bassett Sullivan duking it out for the championship. And those right there, three different manufacturers. We have Acura, Porsche, and Lexus, and others in the GTD class. We have Audi, Aston Martin, BMW, Ferrari, Lamborghini, and Mercedes. And we discussed Meyer Racing drivers Matt McMurray and Mario Farnbacher leading the GTD title battle entering Sebring. But let's talk about one of their teammates in the sister car. For the first time this year, Joey Han will race in IMSA today, sharing the number 57 Acura with Trent Hinman and Misha Gluckberg as Alvaro Perez's replacement, who's going to be racing elsewhere. And for the past several years, Han was a Ford factory driver with the Blue Oval. Unfortunately, nothing materialized since his departure from the Chip Ganassi Racing Ford GT program until now with Meyer Shank Racing. Joey Han is the true definition of a super sub in this situation. Would you agree?
Easily, I would agree. Being a substitute driver, of course, has a lot of challenges. We've seen substitute drivers rise up to the challenge. Some have earned that nickname, the super sub. He has definitely earned a nickname, the super sub. And I anticipate watching him in the race just go out there, perform, and try to make the audition like, hey, I don't want to just be a super sub. I want to be a superstar driver in IMSA, prove that I deserve a full time ride here.
Yeah, considering everything that he's accomplished in his career and spending time as a Ford factory driver with the Ford GT program at Chip Ganassi Racing, it still blows my mind that nobody was able to get Joey Hand a full time ride in 2020. And we all know the talented driver that he is, and maybe go out there, get in that Acura NSX GT3 Meyer Shank Racing, go out there and remind people why you're such a great talented driver, and then maybe it'll open up some doors for him to potentially get a full time ride in 2021, because the paddock has definitely missed the presence of Joey Hatton in 2020. And now looking at IMSA's all time winningest driver Bill Auberlen, he'll miss this year's 12 Hours of Sebring, and it was a really shocking last minute thing because Auberlen was potentially exposed to someone who had COVID-19. And right now, Auberlen is currently at home in quarantine as he awaits his test results. BMW factory driver Nick Yellowly will replace him in the number 96 Turner Motorsport BMW, and with co-drivers Robbie Foley and Dylan McIvern. And a few weeks ago, Yellowly tested positive for COVID-19 himself and recovered following the 24 hours of spa. Joe, we've discussed this topic often on our programs. Luckily, IMSA is at the end of the season, but January's Rolex 24 will be here before you know it, and I'm not sure how much is going to change in the world between now and then. The COVID-19 pandemic is escalating big time now, and it's getting really scary out there, I must admit. And we're definitely keeping everyone in our thoughts and prayers during these unsettling times. And going back to Bill Auberlen, could you imagine if he was in serious contention to win the championship, like maybe five points back from the leader and been forced to miss the final race ultimately, and then his title hopes?
I know we discussed this about various, particularly NASCAR, where they have a playoff format. If a championship four driver was to miss the last race because of COVID, that is one of the big things. A lot of these racing series, and especially the drivers, when you're in a situation where you know you could be in a championship contention, you have to, in a way, try to make a bubble around what you do, keep yourself safe, because it will be. I know for sports car, yes, the mass media that covers NASCAR Formula One may not pick up the story, but you know you'll be the front of Sports Car 365. You'll be the big story on most videos on YouTube that follow sports car racing, the bloggers, IMSA fans. It'll be a huge deal because you got a lot of sponsors on the line. Your manufacturers, teams depend on you to miss the last race because of potential exposure. I mean, already I know separately in MotoGP, we saw how Valentino Rossi missed two races and again tested positive, might miss more races. Of course, Yamaha, they're not having that great of a season, so it's definitely being an impact. So to have that same potential here at IMSA and next year as well too, because as we mentioned, there's still a lot of uncertainty ahead. I think it's very important for the drivers, especially when you know, okay, we're 77 days away from essentially, Daytona 24 hours. We got to do everything we can to ensure that we stay healthy and ready because that's a big race. Last thing you want is to miss the race because of unintentionally putting yourself around a risk and getting yourself sick.
Yeah, definitely. We're gonna have to be careful during these times, especially when we get to Daytona. If we're gonna have the Rolex 24 at Daytona on time, because we know things are getting really bad out there, all across the world, not just here in the United States, but Europe is seeing spikes in cases as well. And you just have to do the best you can, especially when you're in this position. Yeah, people at the track, although you're wearing masks and doing following all of the protocols that the series set in place, you're still out there exposing yourself. And if you have family back at home, you don't want to get this virus and bring it back to them, because they could get really ill as well along with yourself. And honestly, you just have to just do your best to follow the guidelines, and do the best that you can to stay safe and healthy, because this can definitely have major impacts in multiple cases. Not when you're looking at the current situation, racing, it's definitely second nature. and for the most part, we just really want people out there to try to stay healthy, and people at the track just please make sure you're following the guidelines. I remember at a race earlier this season at IMSA. Saw them on TV. People, it seemed like people weren't taking the mask wearing seriously at all, and that was really disappointing to see. And I think IMSA got their message across after that little incident right there.
I would agree. Definitely see IMSA got the message out there. And one of the big things, of course, here at the Grid Network, we do this because we are enthusiastic and want to share our passion and love of racing with you, the fan. And we want all our fans to be safe. So I know a lot of times we talk about the concerns when we don't see the mask. One of the big things, we want everyone to be healthy and enjoy racing because at the end, racing is a sport where as a community, we come together, we enjoy it together, and we always want more time together in the future to enjoy the racing. One of the things we all enjoy as well is pick a winner. And this is going to be a special pick a winner for IMSA. Overall, it's going to be really exciting. We're going to try to figure out, guess who will be the overall winner. But here are your poll winners, starting with DPI, the number 7, Acura Team Penske, Ricky Taylor behind the wheel, followed by LMP2's poll winner, the number 52, PRI Matheson Motorsports with Patrick Kelly, GTLM, the Corvette number 3, Antonio Garcia, and then of course GTD number 16, Wright Motorsports with Jan Halen got the pole with the pick a winner. And of course, definitely we encourage all our viewers, share in the comments, who do you think is going to win overall in the race? Kobe, starting with you, who do you see winning the race?
Oh, I'm actually gonna predict a close battle between the two we mentioned in our program: the number 31 Cadillac DPI and the number 7 Acura Penske DPI. I think it's gonna come down to those two cars, but in the end, I'm gonna go with the number 31 Wheeling Engineering Cadillac DPI Action Express Racing, consisting of Felipe Nasr, Pippa Durrani, and Gabby Chavez, who's replacing Felipe Albuquerque, who's driving for United Autosports over at Bahrain in the WEC.
I know I'm behind in the pick winner stand, so I gotta go something a little bit more wild. We haven't talked much at all about them, but I'm gonna go with the number 77 Mazda Motorsports with Oliver Tristan and Oliver Pia. I feel like what we're gonna see, hopefully, and this is my attempt to try to catch up to you in pick winner. If we see the Penske and the top two get into some action, have an issue on the track, Mazda Motorsports, that number 77, take a surprise win and get me a little bit closer and pick a winner. Definitely
Well,
encourage all fans to participate and pick a winner.
well, I was gonna say, wow, that's a real shocking pick right there, number 77, Mazda DPI. But that's a strong car right there with Oliver Jarvis, Tristan Nunez, and Olivier Pla. Yeah, I definitely think that could be one of the dark horses. While we're focusing, mainly on the championship battle between Acura Team Penske, Wayne Taylor Racing, and then Pippa Durrani from Action Express Racing. Yeah. While we're focusing on the big horses at the top of the class. Yeah, but don't count out Mazda. Mazda's been performing well, and yeah, maybe we could see the number 77 or the sister car take the victory in the 12 hours of Sebring. And coming to the end of our program, we want to thank you all for watching our special edition of Grid Live pre-race for the 68th running of the Mobile One 12 Hours of Sebring. Race coverage gets underway shortly on NBCSN at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 7 a.m. Pacific, and 6 a.m. Alaska. So if you're in Alaska, please bring the coffee because it's gonna be a long day. And the green flag drops at 10:10 a.m. NBCSN will have coverage from 10 to 3, and then NBC gets the time slot on network television from 3 to 6 p.m. Then coverage returns to NBCSN until the checkered flag, 6 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And be sure to check out our Patreon page. We want to continue growing our programs and bringing you top-notch content and continuing to improve. Shout out to our Patreon supporter, Colin. We appreciate you so much. And make sure you follow the Grid World Motorsport League on Twitter at grid_WML, since IMSA drivers are scored. In a couple of hours, we'll have our regular Grid Live pre-race, Formula One and MotoGP at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, and 8 a.m. Alaska. For Judge Sam Niega, I'm Kobe Lambert from the PodiumFinish.net. Have a wonderful Saturday and enjoy the Mobile One 12 Hours of Sebring.